The 2023 Busch Light Clash format has been officially revealed, and Kyle Busch is expected to have new sponsors announced before the end of 2022 for 2023. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to have to start and talk about Richard Petty, as it was announced on Wednesday that Richard Petty will ride on the 75th anniversary photo in the Rose Parade on January 2nd. Really excited to see Richard Petty will be on there. Of course, it is the 75th anniversary of NASCAR, so I think that's something really exciting to see that he's going to be on there. I would not be shocked that we're going to see a lot more legends in the sport that have been around for many years are going to be on that parade. I think you're going to see a lot of people on that parade float, and it's exciting to see that Richard Petty will ride on the 75th anniversary parade float in 2023 on January the 2nd. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some things for 2023 in NASCAR. Now, Austin Ganensky, Works from Sports, I had a couple articles we're going to talk about today. The first article to talk about is some changes that the drivers want for 2023. Basically says that NASCAR drivers are suggesting changes for 2023, which includes changes to the restart zone, making the restart zone a lot larger, and also having better pit stops and having some changes to how pit stops work as well for 2023. The main thing I want to focus on is restart zones. The reason they want bigger restart zones is so the leader doesn't get this major anticipation and don't get as big of an advantage, which I think makes a lot of sense. I think basically limiting how big of advantage the leader has so that the second place car can have a decent advantage as well, where they could be almost equal on a restart, will make restarts a lot more exciting. Because sometimes one lane has a bigger advantage than the other lane. If you kind of make that gap a little bigger for the restart zone, I think you're going to have a really strong possibility of having more fun restarts and it being really more exciting. So we'll see what happens in regards to restart zones, but it sounds like there could be some changes coming, and hopefully that we do see some of the driver suggestions come through for 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about AM Racing. Now, Austin Ganensky for Sports, I wrote another article on AM Racing, and they're apparently a team that could, in a long-term future, jump up to the Cup Series. According to Chris Sider from Cashman, he says that don't be surprised that AM Racing does jump up to the Cup Series in the next 6 or 7 years. That is, if their time in Xfinity Series ends up going very well. AM Racing in 2023 will be jumping up on a full-time basis in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the number 25 that will be driven by Brett Moffitt. And they will also have a big technical alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing, and will get Roush Yates engines in 2023. AM Racing is a team that's kind of struggled in the Truck Series, though they've had some good runs with drivers like Brett Moffitt and Max Gutierrez, and also himself has had some solid runs with his own organization. The goal for AM Racing is for them to, I think, eventually expand to the Cup Series. It wouldn't shock or surprise you by 2030 if we're talking about AM Racing racing in the Cup Series, which would be really exciting. And I think that's a really big goal of the next-gen car, is attract new teams and new manufacturers as well. We've got teams like Junior Motorsports that are showing interest. In the last couple of years, we've had teams like Call come up full-time in the Cup, 2311 Racing come up, Trackhouse Racing, 3F Racing, you name it. A lot of teams that come up to the Cup Series, and I think it would be very exciting to see a team like AM Racing get the opportunity one day to jump up to the Cup Series. But I think it's going to be at least another 6 to 7 years. But by 2030, when I'm around 30 years old, we could see a team like AM Racing full-time in the Cup Series with the charter in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Austin Cindric. As it was reported a couple days ago by Nextline PR that Austin Cindric is going to run the 2023 Rolex 24, as he revealed on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. While the team has not been announced for Austin Cindric to run, I would not think he'll be running for the overall event unless, of course, he does run for the Porsche Team Penske car. He probably will not run for the overall win. But I think it's very exciting to see that Austin Cindric is going to run the 2023 Rolex 24. He's going to get a lot of that off-season experience and will be a driver that I think will do very solid. In fact, I think he may have won the Rolex 24 in the past in his class, if I'm not mistaken. So running in a Rolex 24 will be very exciting. And people who are Austin Cindric fans are going to tune into the Rolex 24. I think a lot of people are already going to tune into it regardless, but having Austin Cindric race in the Rolex 24 in 2023, I think is extremely exciting, really awesome to see, and very happy to see that Austin Cindric is going to run in the 2023 Rolex 24. We'll see what team he ends up running for. That has not been announced at this time, but we'll see where he ends up driving for in 2023 and what class he's going to end up running for in 2023. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tyler Reddick. Now, 2311 Racing put out a video earlier today showing Tyler Reddick being graded by Kurt Busch, as Kurt Busch, who of course will not be driving full-time for the team, will be driving part-time, be kind of like a driver coach for both Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace. He ended up going ahead and greeting Tyler Reddick, Kurt Busch did, and gave him some major words of advice. Tyler Reddick, like I just mentioned, will drive the 45 car for 2311 Racing, and Reddick said in that video that he has some really high expectations. He thinks he can win 4 to 5 races, but wants to take it very easy and has goals to win at least 1 or 2 races in the 2023 season. Tyler Reddick is a driver that I think is going to surprise a lot of people in a major, major way. When you look at Tyler Reddick and how well he performed in 2022, Tyler Reddick scored 3 victories in the NASCAR Cup Series. Yes, he got eliminated in the round of 16, but he had a massive, massive breakout year in 2022. And I can see Tyler Reddick having another outstanding year in 2023. I think he's going to be a legitimate championship contender. I think he's going to make the round of 8 in 2023, and I think he'll win at least 2 to 3 races this upcoming season. He's a driver to get the best out of equipment, and we've seen how 2311 Racing, especially this year from 2021 to 2022, how much they improved as an organization, scoring 2 wins as an organization, and I think 2023 for 2311 Racing, along with Bubba Wallace, I really think you're going to see a really strong organization and major improvements for the team going into the 2023 season. There's a lot of excitement for sure around the corner, and I think Reddick is someone to definitely watch for who could be an outside threat for the championship in 2023. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Williams. As it was announced a couple days ago that Josh Williams will return to DGM Racing in 2023, driving the number 92 car. DGM Racing is planning to be a 2-car organization in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2023, downsizing from a 3-car organization down to 2-car organization, with the second driver expected to be announced in the not-so-distant future in the coming weeks in early January. Let's talk about Josh Williams returning DGM Racing. He actually drove for DGM Racing for many, many years. And Josh Williams always gets the best out of equipment. I remember back, I think it was in 2021, where he drove for DGM Racing, and in 2020, had some top 15s and a couple top 10s as well. I think Josh Williams is one of the most underrated drivers in NASCAR. I think this is a really good move for Josh Williams. I'm not expecting him, though, to set the world on fire where he's going to win races, because DGM Racing is a team that really hasn't got to that expectation where they're a team that can win a ton of races on a week-by-week basis. But I do think that DGM Racing has a ton of potential to really step up to the plate and really show some improvement going into 2023. And I think it's very smart as well that DGM Racing is downsizing from a 3-car operation to a 2-car operation, because they can focus on those 2 cars and run up front a lot more consistently. So I think this is a fantastic move for DGM Racing. My expectations are I think Josh Williams will get 2 or 3 top 10s, maybe 1 top 5 if he's lucky, and a lot of top 20s as well. It's going to be very competitive Xfinity Series field next year. I think Josh Williams, though, is going to have a really strong year, and I think he'll have a good year in 2023 in the Xfinity Series. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the future of the NASCAR schedule. And this is something I kind of talked about on the channel about 2 months ago, but it was reported by Austin Kanensky from Sportsnet that NASCAR could expand the schedule to 42 races by 2025. Now, keep in mind, this is just a rumor, but was initially talked about by Lee Spencer, who does the Racing Pit Boys podcast, which is a podcast that's been really, really popular. The goal is for them to have 42 races. Now, it would not be 42 points-paying races. It would be 40 points-paying races, and then another 2 exhibition races, that being the All-Star Race and the Busch Light Clash. A lot of drivers, if this does come to fruition, while it probably will give teams some more money, probably actually a lot more money, as a matter of fact, if they are to expand the schedule to that length, you're going to have drivers that are going to get very, very frustrated. Drivers like a lot of their off time, and I think, honestly, we've been also compacting the schedule a little bit, less practice, less qualifying every single year. But I think that having a 42-race schedule, a 40-race schedule is absolutely crazy when teams and drivers are clearly wanting less. They're wanting races to be conducted. Now, they're not, some drivers like Chase Elliott said, we don't need to basically drop how many races there are. We just need to cut how many weeks there are, which I completely agree. Having midweek races, especially in the city, would make a lot of sense. I think 42 races, maybe they could find a way to make those midweek races so we can keep the schedule the same length, where it's 38 weeks, but find a way to have some midweek races as well, which I think that would not be a bad call. However, I think if you want to talk about this, I personally think we need to shorten the schedule a little bit down to around 32 to 34 races. I'm not saying we take like it all the way down to like 28 or 24 races or 26. That's absolutely absurd. I've seen some people say that, and that's a little bit crazy. But I think around 32 to 34 races will be a perfect median. Get a couple weekends early or done, and then have the season end in the middle of October where you can have a little more time for silly season and get prepared a little bit more. This is something you definitely watch for sure as time goes on, but it sounds like this could be a possibility, and honestly, I don't want to see this happen just because of the fact that it would be a lot longer to schedule, and I don't want to see the teams or drivers get frustrated by longer schedules, because again, 42 races is a lot, especially for these teams, and I think it would be an extremely long schedule for the teams in the future. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about iRacing. Now, this is really the only IndyCar story we're talking about today. But this one is a massive, massive one and really a gut punch to IndyCar fans yesterday, including myself. So it was announced yesterday that iRacing's deal with IndyCar is currently up on December 31st of 2022. That means that 8 days from today, the deal will be done with IndyCar. What is really majorly noted is that there's going to be some shifts and some changes that are going to be happening with IndyCar. And the big reason is because there's an exclusivity deal coming down with Motorsports Games, MSG. One of the big changes that's going to be coming is there's going to be no longer races are going to be no longer going to be able to be broadcasted on any sort of broadcast like Twitch or any of the streaming services. You will not be allowed to stream those, including the iRacing Indy 500, which has been a hot commodity. This right here is a massive, massive flop for multiple reasons. If this was an acquisition with EA, I could completely understand because EA is a massive company. While EA has had a lot of really, really questionable and bad business practices over the years, I would completely understand if EA was the one, or like Codemasters, which of course is part of EA, I would have completely understood. But Motorsports Games, oh boy, this company is not a good company, let's just say that. There's been a lot of stuff that's been coming out as of recently about Motorsports Games, and stuff that's been posted even tonight, as a matter of fact, and let's just say it's not very good. They got an investor, but it sounds like we don't know what's going on with that. And there's a lot of stuff going on with Motorsports Games. Let's say they've been running out of money, and there's been a lot of stuff that's been going on with Motorsports Games. And honestly, it's not very good what's going on with Motorsports Games. And there is a possibility that we may not even see Motorsports Games completely survive through 2023. Like I said, we did hear that they got an investor, but some people are saying maybe that didn't go through in that acquisition. I don't really know. But going back to the whole exclusivity deal, I'm not putting full blame on iRacing. I've seen most people really, though, put the blame on IndyCar, and I think IndyCar is completely at fault for this. What they're doing here, and I've been someone who's been a proponent of this, I think exclusive deals are really stupid. You basically block the reach of a series like IndyCar, and this is a major, major problem. Competition is a great thing in video games, and if you have good competition, it's going to make these teams be able to build a better product. When you have exclusivity, it does bring in complacency, and complacency brings in laziness. And what's going to unfortunately end up happening is that I think that if this does happen, IndyCar they do release this video game, which it's unclear if it's even going to happen or not. If this does end up happening, though, this is a really bad look in general for IndyCar. And IndyCar, I've said this, has made a lot of mistakes over the last year or two. Testing bans, this engine situation. I think this is a major black eye for IndyCar. When you have people like Dale Jr., Ryan Vargas, Anthony Alfredo commenting on this situation, you know it's not good at all. And I feel terrible for IndyCar fans, including myself, because iRacing has been basically a proponent to share IndyCar stuff. And it's been so unfortunate to see what's been going on with Motorsports Games over there and what's been going on with the company and all that kind of stuff. There's other people who've done a really much better job on the whole situation, so I'm not doing a really good job covering that. But I will say that there's been a lot of problems with the Motorsports Games situation, and it's not been great to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 Racing. Now, there's a report that came out from Nextline PR that came out earlier a couple days ago that 2311 Racing could run a third car in 2023 part-time. This could be run for two reasons. One, they could run this for Kurt Busch. If Kurt Busch is medically clear to run some race in 2023, we are going to see a third entry from 23XI Racing. The other option that could come into play is potentially maybe some sponsorship obligations come up and some drivers want to race in that third car. That could become a possibility. This is nothing new. This has been rumored for a while that this could be a major possibility, that 23XI Racing could have a third car at points in 2023. But basically, Steve Auletta is confirming that that is going to be a reality in 2023. I do think that Kurt Busch will make it if he starts next year, because I do actually believe that Kurt Busch is going to be medically cleared to race in some select NASCAR Cup Series race in 2023. He could run the Daytona 500 if he is medically cleared, but I don't know if he will be medically cleared to race, because remember, Kurt Busch basically suffered a career-ending concussion, at least on the full-time scale side of things, but not on the part-time side of things. But I think we'll see Kurt Busch make a few starts next year. I mean, he's got a couple races on his bucket list he wants to run. Maybe run some SRX races. He could run at Darlington in NASCAR. Could run at Watkins Glen, try to win there. He talked about that back in Las Vegas on the October weekend. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens with this. But it sounds like there's a major possibility that this could actually end up happening. And honestly, I would definitely be really excited to see a driver like Kurt Busch, who's a legend, come back and run any few select starts in 2023. And I think, honestly, he would be very competitive in that third car. The other question is, what number would he run? I think, for the big sake, I think they run the 97 car. That's the number Kurt Busch started with in his NASCAR Cup Series career when he drove the 97 back in 2000 up until 2005 before he left Roush. I think it would make a ton of sense for him to run the number 97. That's a legendary number, and I think it would make a lot of sense to bring it in. I've seen some people doing concepts of it, and honestly, they've looked really, really good, and I would love for them to go ahead and run the number 97 for Kurt Busch. I think that'd be very, very exciting, really, really good, and honestly, I do hope that there's a chance that Kurt Busch does make a return in 23XI Racing, decides to run their second car, a third car, in 2023. In my honest opinion, I think it would be very, very exciting. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, we've talked about Kyle Busch quite a bit on this channel over the last couple of weeks, and this is due to sponsorship situations. A few weeks ago, around December 9th, it would have been announced that Kyle Busch would have 5 confirmed sponsors for 2023. Now, I kind of wanted to touch on this story a little bit more because Tori Galita said on December 9th, around that time, that before the end of 2022, Kyle Busch is expected to have some more sponsorship announcements before the end of 2023. Which means that this sounds like that Kyle Busch is not completely sold out. We do know that Cheddar's is going to have a bigger investment in Kyle Busch in Richard Childress Racing next year, so that's probably going to be the main primary for most of the year. We've all seen Alsco get their sponsor revealed and basically the paint scheme revealed for that as well. But now we talk about what other companies could sponsor Kyle Busch in 2023. The first one that could sponsor, what about Sling? We know that Sling had some interactions with Kyle Busch's tweet and also Richard Childress Racing's tweets about potential sponsors. Why not Sling? Sling would be a really big investment of a company. They've shown some interest, and we've seen a design from Lefty. They could be a company that could basically sponsor. Hot Wheels. Hot Wheels is a company that has sponsored Richard Childress Racing in the past. In fact, I think they sponsored Richard Childress Racing about a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think at Homestead, I think Talladega as well, they sponsor Richard Childress Racing. That would be a company that I think would be willing to sponsor Kyle Busch. And then another company that I would think would probably be a really strong possibility is Realtree. Realtree has been a big sponsor for Richard Childress Racing for a long time. They've been sponsoring Richard Childress Racing for many, many years, and they've appeared on the RCR branded cars for many, many years. So that's one thing we're going to have to wait and see on. But this basically makes Joe Gibbs Racing look bad. We know that recently there's been some stuff that's come to light about Joe Gibbs Racing around the FedEx situation. Adam Stern put out a tweet about FedEx, and with the cost-cutting situation, they honestly may cut their costs with FedEx. We know that M&M's had issues with Joe Gibbs Racing. But at least the good news is Kyle Busch is going to be sponsored for 2023. The big question is what other sponsors and what other companies can come in, other ones I just mentioned. We don't know at this point. We're just going to have to wait and see. But it sounds like we could be getting some more sponsorship announcements in the not-so-distant future. And honestly, if you're a Kyle Busch fan, you got to be really, really excited as we get close to 2023. But not only that, if you're a Kyle Busch fan, you also got to be excited for the performance, because I really think going into 2023, we're going to see a huge uptick in performance for Kyle Busch. I think he's going to have his best year in his NASCAR Cup Series career since 2019 when he won his last championship. I think he's going to make the championship 4. That's a bold prediction, but I think he makes the championship 4. But also, I think that A team, because of how strong that team was and with Kyle Busch coming in, taking over for Tyler Reddick, I think that there's got to be a lot of things you got to be excited about if you are a Kyle Busch fan going into the 2023 season, and I think this is going to be a massive year for Kyle Busch. We'll see what responses will get announced for Kyle Busch, but it sounds like that there could be some new sponsors coming in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2023 Busch Light Clash. As earlier today, it was reported by NASCAR and many other reporters that the 2023 Busch Light Clash format has been officially revealed. And there are more cars that are going to be entering the 2023 Busch Light Clash. 23 cars in 2021 were the numbers that raced in the main event. That has been increased to 27 cars, meaning that 27 of the potentially 36 starters will end up making the show. That is 3/4 of the field that's ended up making the show. So here's how the rest of the format works. The top 5 from each of the heats, there's going to be 4 heats in 2023. The top 5 from each of the heats will end up making it to the main. The rest of the drivers that will race in 2 last chance qualifiers and the top 3 from each of those last chance qualifiers will end up making the show. And the driver, the 27 driver, which will be the last driver who gets in, will be the driver that is highest in the points. No fan vote award, none of that stuff. Basically, who's ever the highest in points at the time, that could be a high-profile driver that may not end up getting in. That will be something that will end up happening. The 27 driver will be in there. First thing this confirms that Joey Logano also will end up making the Busch Light Clash completely. He's for sure locked in to the 2023 Busch Light Clash because he's the highest in points. Therefore, even if he does end up making it to the last chance qualifiers, doesn't make it in through the heats by winning it, even though I think he's going to end up winning his heat, to be honest, he would be a driver that's completely locked in. I want to sit down and talk about this for a minute because let's be honest about this. 27 cars entering the Busch Light Clash is a problem for a couple reasons. First of all, we're at a quarter-mile racetrack. There is almost going to be time, and they're basically going to be lapping cars within about 8 or 9 laps. That's how fast it's going to be, and I think that is a lot of cars for a small track as well. 27 is really extreme. Number 2, the number of cars that are entered in the 2023 Busch Light Clash. There's a possibility you could get 40 and maybe more, but I don't think you're going to get more than 36. Like I said, that means it's going to be 3/4 of the field. Then almost at this point, why not just let everybody race in the event? To me, I think that's a little bit overburdened how many people are going to be allowed in the event. Now, compared to the All-Star race, at least with this event, you basically do have to race your way in. Unless you're Joey Logano, you really do have to race your way in. So you could have some potential really crazy stories where one of the 27 drivers that doesn't make the show is a driver like, let's say, Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson. Though both those guys, I think, will be able to make the show. But you're going to have almost all the major stars make the event, and you're only going to have 9 drivers basically that are going to be sitting out. I just think that's a little bit overkill and a little bit overburdened. To me, in my honest opinion, I think only 20 drivers should be racing in the main event, and there's no last chance qualifier. Well, basically, you get the top 4 from each event, and then you get the top 2 from the last chance qualifiers. I personally think only 20 drivers should be able to lock their way into the Busch Light Clash because it makes it more exclusive for that event. The fact that 27 drivers make the show, in my honest opinion, is a little bit overburdened, and I think it's a little bit overkill, in my honest opinion. I just think it's a little bit overburdened. But regardless, so I am excited for the Busch Light Clash. I think it's going to be a really exciting event, and I cannot wait for it. But a lot of drivers are getting in the event, and that is a lot of drivers going to be racing in the Clash. I think you're going to see a lot of wrecks. I think you're going to see more of a caution fest than you saw in 2022, which surprisingly wasn't as big of a caution fest as we thought it was going to be. But I think the fact you're nearly going to have the full 36-car field, you're going to have a lot of cautions, in my opinion, and I think that's going to create a lot of damage and a lot of broken pieces and a lot of broken parts as well. So this is something that's kind of crazy that there's going to be 27 cars that are going to be racing in 2023 in the Busch Light Clash. But honestly, a lot of cars. I mean, yes, it's going to be torn up equipment. It's going to definitely be fun. I think the race hopefully will be better, though. Maybe we get some rain racing because we got over-rain packages coming in, which I think that's really cool, by the way. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. But that is the 2023 Busch Light Clash format for the Clash. So, that is your today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's get your blood with that and comment your thoughts on today's video. What companies do you think will sponsor Kyle Busch in 2023? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know your thoughts on the 2023 Busch Light Clash format. Let me know those in the comments below. This is the last video that's going to be uploaded for a couple days, as I'm going to be going on a little bit of a break here on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. I will not be uploading on YouTube. So before I go, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, and hope you spend your time with your families over the next couple days. We will be back in a few days, upload content. Don't worry, I've got some good content that's on the way, and maybe a special video that's going to drop on Monday. But I want to thank you all for watching. Honestly, happy holidays and Merry Christmas. So I'll see you guys after the break, and I'll see you guys for some more awesome content. Follow me on my social medias. I'll see you guys for more awesome content on this channel. Take care, everybody.